This packet is set up to help you practice graphing and solving for y. In each section, I'm going to go through many different examples so you can see it repeatedly. I need you to pay attention through all the examples so that you can get the full experience and the full understanding. After that, you'll pause the video and do that section. So let's start with the first section, 1 through 20. In this section, we're going to solve for y. Now, I've shown you in the past that you can easily solve for y by putting the box around the y and then getting everything away from it. In this video, or in this packet, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm not going to put a box. I'm going to give you several steps. And the first step is to do whatever the opposite of x. So you're going to do the opposite of whatever x is. Okay? Now, right now, x is 13x. What's the opposite of 13x? It's minus 13x or negative 13x. And make sure to do it on both sides. Now with that, this side, that cancels out, and we're left with negative 5y equals, and then we have these two numbers. Okay, step 2 and 3 are kind of the same. X is always first. And step 3, never combine. Okay, x is always first, and you never want to combine. So that means we're going to take x and put it first. Okay, and then we have the negative 51 after. And that's what step 3 says, is never combine those two. Always keep them separate. Now let's keep moving on. Next step is to divide by whatever's in front of the y. And you just divide everything, leaving us with y equals, and if we see here, we can see, the numbers don't cancel, but we can cancel out the negatives. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. So that leaves us with a positive 13 over 5x. And then here, again, the numbers won't cancel, but we do want to cancel the negatives. Plus 51 over 5. Now you can convert this last number into a decimal if you need to for graphing. Graphing, if we look at that, it's kind of hard to visualize where it is. But if we turn it into a decimal, we'll see it's 10.2. Well, we can figure out 10.2 is just low past 10, so that's easy enough. Okay, next. With this one, again, we do the opposite of x. Opposite of x is always our first step. Opposite of x. Right now that's positive 3x, so we're going to make it a negative 3x. Negative 3x. And that leaves us with just y equals, because that cancels out, y equals, and that x always comes first. Negative 3x, and then negative 4. And that's as simplified as it comes right there, because the y is completely by itself. The next one, again, we just want to do the opposite of x. Opposite of x. So we're going to minus x, minus x. That's positive x, so we're going to do a negative x. And we have negative 2y equals, x always comes first, negative x, and then we can have that plus 0 if we want, but we don't need it. So I'm going to put that in red just so we know it can be there, but we don't need it. Now we're going to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, and divide by negative 2. and we have y equals, and this is the same thing as negative 1x. So that becomes a positive 1/2 because there's a negative on top and on bottom. So 1/2 x, and then this is just plus 0. So we can leave it like that, or we can put the plus 0 if you want. If you need to know the y-intercept, that's perfectly fine. And that's how you solve that one. Next, and again, we're just doing practice, example after example. First step, again, opposite x. Opposite x. So we're going to do the opposite of x on both sides. And we have 5y equals, x always comes first, so negative 7x, and then we have a positive y, or excuse me, a positive 8. Now, and we never combine those, so now we divide by whatever number's in front of the y, leaving us with y equals, can't simplify that anymore, so negative 7 over 5x, and we can't simplify that either, so plus 8 over 5, and there's our number. Okay, that's solved for y. So remember our steps. Always solve, or always, step 1, always do the opposite of x. Step 2 is always, or never combine, and x always comes first. And then finally, we divide by whatever's in front of y. So step 1, here we are, number 9. Step 1 is negative x, right? Opposite of x. So negative 6x, negative 6x, and we are left with, this cancels out, we are left with negative 7y equals, x always comes first, negative 6x, and then a negative 28. Okay, never combine them, x always comes first. Divide by negative 7, divide by negative 7, divide by negative 7, and we have y equals, and the negatives will cancel out because there's one on top and on bottom, 6 over 7x, and again, negative 28 divided by negative 7. This one we actually can simplify, and it becomes a positive 4. Do it on your calculator if you have any doubts. Okay, so that's solved for y. Opposite of x, step 1, opposite of x, so negative 3x. If it's a negative, you do a positive. Negative 3x, opposite of x, leaving us with negative y equals negative 3x. X always comes first, always first, and then a negative 2. Now we have a negative y here. We can't do that. Now remember, if we do it on both sides of the equation, then we're fine. So whenever you have just a negative y, just remember, change all the signs on the whole problem. And that will get that taken care of. So if we change that to a positive y, then we change all the signs. Positive 3x, positive 2. If we change all the signs, then we're fine. Okay, that one's easy, just opposite of x. So we would minus x, gets rid of that. We have y equals, and x always comes first, minus x and a positive 7. And there's your answer. Let's see, I'm trying to see if there's anything unique. We'll do 2 more examples here. Opposite of x, so negative 3x on both sides. And we have 2y equals negative 3x and positive 12. Always keep them separate, never combine them. divide by 2, divide by 2, and divide by 2. And we are left with y equals negative 3 over 2. That can't simplify any. X. And then this turns into a positive 6. So let's find one more. This one's as good as any. Opposite of x, negative 7x, negative 7x, and we're left with negative 4y equals, never combine them, and x always comes first, so negative 7x and positive 32. Now we're going to divide by negative 4. We are left with, that cancels out, we're left with y equals, the negatives go away, but the numbers don't simplify any, so we'll just leave that as 7 over 4x. And 32 divided by negative 4 is negative 8. So that's how you do that first section. Go ahead and pause the video and complete the first section, please. In this second section, we're just going to simply graph. In order to graph, you've got to remember this is the y-intercept. That means that that deals with this line right here, the y-intercept. Okay? That tells us where we cross the y-intercept. So if we begin with that in mind, we say, okay, we're going to cross the y-axis at negative 3. So I'm going to put a dot right there on negative 3. Now, this part right here is our rise over run. Or as I suggested, you remember it as change in y over change of x. Or you can just simply remember it as the part that goes up and down over the part that goes sideways. Okay, that's all you need to remember right there. The part that goes up and down or over the part that goes sideways. So how far are we going up and down? We're going up and down 1. So from our point, remember this is our starting point. So from our starting point, we're going to go up 1 and then over positive 4. Now how do I know which way is positive? Well, look at the numbers. There's 6, negative 6, negative 6, and 6. Which way is positive? Positive is this side, negative is this side, positive is up here, and negative is down here. So that tells us which way we're going. So from our point, we're going positive 1 and positive 4. And then we put another point, and there's our line. Okay, on this one, same thing. Our y-intercept is negative 3. So we're going to put a point right there on negative 3. That's our starting point. And then we're going to go up and down. And right and left. We're going to go up positive 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's our line. Just like that. Okay, now what happens if we have a whole number here? Always over 1. Just always over 1. If it's just a whole number, it's always over 1. So our y-intercept is negative 1. We get that from right here. That's our negative 1. That's our starting point. From there, we're going to go negative 2, so down 2, and over 1. Positive 1, right? That negative right there can go with either one. It can go with the 2 or the 1. It doesn't matter, but it can only go with one or the other, not both. If it went with both, well, then we'd have a negative on both sides, and the negatives would just cancel out, right? Making it a positive number. We can't do that, so we're going to leave it either with the 2 or the 1, but not both. And we have our line. Now this one, we have just x equals 4. Well, what does that mean? Well, let's find where x, you got to remember your x and y axis, equals 4. Okay? Now I talked to you about the y's missing, so it's parallel to y. Think of it this way. There's only one letter, which means it's only going to cross one axis. What axis is it going to cross? It's going to cross the x-axis. That's it. So that means it has to go up and down because it's only going to go across the x. It can't cross the y. Well, what happens if that's a y equals 4? Well, find where y equals 4, put a point, and it's only going to cross the y-axis. So it's parallel to x right there. Now what happens in that same sense if it's like x equals 0? Well, find where x equals 0, and it's still only going to cross one axis. Yeah, it just so happens that that axis happens to be, I'm doing great with this straight line, that axis just happens to be the y, or that line just happens to be the y-axis, but again, it's not crossing the y, it just is the y. So x equals -3, we just find where -3 is, and it's an up and down line. Our y-intercept is -1. So from here, we're going to go up 1, so 1, and then over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Up 1 and over 4. Positive on both. There's our line, if you'd, hit the dots. Okay, so just remember, you're going up, or excuse me, this is your starting point, always on the y-axis. And this is how far you're going up or down, depending on if it's positive or negative. And this is how far you're going right or left, again, depending on if it's positive or negative. So give that section a try. Okay, number 41 through 50, or 41 through 51, I think, I'm not sure. This is the easiest part right here. I'm only going to do 2 examples because it's that easy. Find the x-intercept. So x is -1. So on my x-axis, I'm going to go to -1. Put a point. On my y, I'm going to go to 2. So on my y, I'm going to go to 2. There's my 2 points. Draw the line. And on this one, same thing. My x-intercept will be 4. So on x, I'm going to go to 4. My y-intercept is 3. So on my y-axis, I'm going to go to 3. And there's my straight line, perfectly straight. So that's all you're doing for these next 10 is you're just putting the 2 axes and putting it in. Well, now, how do I find the slope of that line if I need to? Well, just count. I'm going down 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 3, 4. So -3 over 4 is my slope. And what's my y-intercept? My y-intercept is +3. You don't need to do this. I'm just showing you how to do it. All you have to do is graph the points in the line. So give those next 10 questions a try. Okay, in the last 10, you're just combining step 1 and step 2. Solve for y and graph. That's all you're doing. Solve for y and graph. Solve for y and graph. That's it. So combine section 1 and section 2 for the last 10. Hopefully this helps.